Welcome to the Ebony Road Players podcast. I'm your host, Edye Evans-Hyde, singer, performer, and founder of Ebony Road Players. As a Black theater company in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Ebony Road Players strives to inspire, educate, and engage the cultures of our community. In this podcast, we take a deeper dive into the topics and issues surrounding the stories that we tell. So let's jump right into some meaningful dialogue and celebrate the diverse communities that we share. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Ebony Road Players podcast. I'm really happy to have you here. My name is Edye Evans-Hyde, and I have a couple of wonderful guests for us this evening. But what I want to do is I want to start off with a quote that will hopefully lead us into a great conversation today. So the quote is, "I'm a theater nerd. That means I live in a crazy fantasy world where I randomly break out into show tunes. Thank you for understanding." And I loved that quote because I kind of heard the word nerd with one of our guests today, yes. Mr. Perry Dixon.
That's me.
Perry is a actor and a good friend of mine we go back way back for some theater stuff.
Yeah.
And I also have Ja'Nay Duncan, who's also an amazing woman, amazing actress who's done some things for Ebony Road Players. And they are our guests today. And they are theater nerds, I do believe. So Perry, why don't you tell everybody who you are and why are you a theater nerd?
Yes. Yes, I'm Perry Dixon. And I guess my theater nerddom started at a very early age with my obsession with West Side Story. So that's, I guess, where it started, because at the time in the neighborhood I lived in, that was not cool. But for me as a kid, seeing music and seeing guys dance more than anything was fascinating to me, because dancing was relegated to, ballerinas and women. And I thought, nah, this is the good stuff right here. And so from that point on, I followed West Side Story. I watched it every year religiously, knew all the lyrics to all the songs, and would often break out in song, which to the derision of my homeboys, but I didn't care.
No.
Yeah. And then it went on from there to Michigan State and to current day.
It's wonderful. And we do have you on another episode telling your whole story.
Yes.
So I just wanted you to give us a little piece of that. And where are you normally from that you would think that dancing was not a thing for guys to do?
Grew up in Detroit. I'm a Motor City homeboy. Grew up in the Jeffries Housing Project, so it was as far away from theater as you can imagine.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Miss Ja'Nay, how about your nerddom? Tell me about that.
I'm kind of a nerd by default, just because so like the classic TV nerd with the inhaler and the glasses and the braces. I have asthma. This smile is not natural, and I cannot see. So I was kind of a nerd off top. I loved books and things of that nature. And then theater was just part of that. I loved being anywhere theater was involved, because books and theaters kind of went hand in hand. You got to escape and go to these different worlds and explore all these different things and kind of be all these different people. And then theater, I just never stopped. So it was when I was younger, whether it was church or children's theater, and high school and college, and still now today doing community theater. I'm absolutely a theater nerd. By default, honestly.
And do you break out in song as well?
Every I will. Yeah. Yep. More often. More often.
It's a thing. Being a theater nerd is a thing. And that might sound not so positive for some people, but when you find your people, they understand you, right?
Yep.
Right. And I think, Perry, you alluded to that last time we spoke about finding your people, and you found your people when you were in college. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I was Michigan State. I went to Michigan State and stumbled into the theater program in there completely by mistake. Was never on my radar. Theater as a concept and as an art form was never really on my radar. As I mentioned before, my only connection was West Side Story, and thus my freshman year at Michigan State, they had auditions for West Side Story.
Oh my goodness!
And that was it. That little seedling was sprouted into the redwood tree that is alive today, because on a lark, I thought I'm going to audition, even though I knew nothing about theater, dance, singing, auditioning, nothing. It was a complete, I'm just going to see what this is about.
And you got in.
I got in. Not only did I get in, and I didn't mention this last time, this kind of sped up the snowball, but the Dixie Durr, who's famous at Michigan State for who initially headed the dance department, but she eventually headed the theater department, took this extremely green black guy under her wing, and she made me assistant choreographer. Now, I mentioned to you that I knew nothing about dance, I knew nothing about theater or none of that. And she was like, "No, you're going to be my assistant choreographer." And I was like, okay, well, and that's where it started.
That's where it started.
On, yeah.
And all you need is what you say, a little bud or a little niblet or something.
Yep.
That kind of turns you on, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. Yep. And Ja'Nay, so where did you start? I know you were saying you were reading and that type of thing, but give me what started you in theater?
If I had to pick a pinpoint, it would have to be church.
Okay.
When I was younger, I would go to church with my mother and my family in Detroit. And whether it was Easter plays or just Sunday plays in the kids programs, I was there. I was in it. I put me in front, coach. I want pieces. And then when we moved to Lansing, my family moved from Grand Rapids to Lansing. My mother passed away and there was no church. My dad did not go to church. So we got in children's theater. He was like, well, you don't have to stop acting. We can just, you can do that. That's not a problem. So I got into local children's theater. And I did that. I did shows doing that. And then in middle school, it was more choir and piano and things like that. And then when I got to high school, it was back to stage. I still did choir. I cheerleaded and did all those fun things. But it was when I fell back in love with stage, and I went to school and I was like, that's it. I'm going to school for theater. If I'm going to pay trillions of dollars to get an education, it is going to be in what I want. So I went to school for theater, and that switched to anthropology. So, it wasn't, I learned a lot. But theater is something that I've always done. So I was like, I can get my degree in something else that I love and continue to do what I love in the theater community. And I have not looked back. So
yeah.
I wind up here with you.
Yes, it's a great story. Great. And and you guys can speak to this. For me, and I didn't do live theater in high school. I was in choir and I was in band and I was in a couple of musicals. And I never really thought about doing it outside of that environment, and didn't do anything for a little while until I found Robeson Players and ended up just doing a jazz musical, and just totally fell in love with it. And I think if I go back to the high school, I was in choir, I was in 2 choirs, and I was in band. And I think doing the musical made me want to go to school. It was like, okay, I really wasn't going to school for math or science. I mean, I liked it, but I wanted to make sure that I had my choir. I didn't want to skip school because I had my arts. And I don't really know how the high school let me, take 3 art classes like that, performing arts classes back in the day, and I still graduate, but I did, and that's kind of where I went with it. So having said that, what do you think about what's the positives of, I know you're a nerd when it comes to theater and art, but let's talk about the real stuff. Like, what is it? What's the positive part of the theater world or the art world? Why is that such a wonderful thing that can be for a lot of different people? Perry, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I said this before, and you've heard me say this before, but I think everyone loves a good story. Specifically, I mean, when it comes to theater, but as far as art as a broader concept, I think art, allows us to see things beyond what our eyes can see. It delves into our both individual and collective psyche. I'm an art school grad, so it's like I think human beings are always delving for meaning wherever they can find it. And I think, in stories and in art and theater, we can find those things. And so in that aspect, I think it provides that at the very, very least.
Mm-hmm. And is that for the artist that you're saying, or for like the community that would come and see it?
Both. I mean, both. I think I truly believe that what resides in us individually is part of our collective reality. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. We can all be inside our own individual heads, but those disparate stories and ideas and thoughts do form a realistic reality that's collective. And so I think art kind of delves into that. I mean, an individual artist can tell a lot of people's story, and I think that's the magic of it, really.
Right. Ja'Nay, you want to add to that?
Yes. My favorite thing about, I think the most positive thing, my big takeaway from theater is the community that you build. So you get to spend time and tell stories and create memories with people that you might not see normally. You might not get a chance to meet or spend time with or hear this person's story if you weren't in this community theater together, if you weren't in this theater community together. And then to piggyback on the storytelling, you get to bring a story to light to people who might not have seen that story before. So one of my favorite things ever, we did Caesar when I was in college, and but we did it like urban.
Okay. Right.
And it felt I remember feeling like so cool. I'm like, because I don't like Shakespeare. And
what?
I was like, oh, I'm so excited to do this show. I'm really excited to do the show. So as a kid who didn't like Shakespeare, it was really fun to be involved in that show and hear it from that perspective and get to bring it to someone who might have been like me and was like, yeah, I'm not interested, not hearing it, don't really care for it. You get a chance to bring new light to something that's been around for trillions and trillions of years. You get to light something that kind of already has it already has a story behind it. This is already something that exists on its own without me saying anything. So to be able to kind of interpret it to something that is enjoyable for a different group of people is something also that I enjoy about theater.
That is a great point. I have two things to say about that. One is Romeo and Juliet. You don't like Romeo and Juliet?
I love Romeo and Juliet, like when Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, got it. Well, and what's really funny is West Side Story is really based off of Romeo and Juliet.
Exactly.
And that's the whole, you're learning it anyway through this other force. And I have to tell you that the first time I ever saw Shakespeare is I went to Canada, where the Shakespeare Festival is, Stratford. And it was a rock opera of Hamlet.
Oh, wow.
The best thing I'd ever seen. I was in the 10th grade and totally decided I am in love with Shakespeare. So that's how I got it, and it is, when you're an artist and I'm going to take this on one more step for you, is when you see theater and we take some of the classics and we turn them into maybe Black theater or put different diversity in a particular piece. How important, it sounds like, Ja'Nay, it was really important for you to see something like that, but how important is that to get people to understand theater and even the classics? And you guys can, Ja'Nay, you don't have to jump in.
Speaking to the point of telling stories from a different perspective and reaching a broader audience, if these are not stories that you typically grow up hearing, you might not have an eye necessarily for the classics or what are to consider to be the classics. And if MTV had a fun time, they did Carmen, the hip hop opera.
Okay.
When they turned Othello into a movie with the guy in the 90s, and then they did Shakespeare, Leonardo with the guns. Like, you're reaching an audience that might not have. I might not have enjoyed Romeo and Juliet with swords, but if you get them some slick guns and throw now I might be compelled to watch it. And then if I watch it, then I might be compelled to read it, because if I watch a movie, I want to read the book now. And that's me personally. So it could turn into something else. And now I read the story and, maybe I want to explore doing the show, and I might not want to do the show. Maybe I don't want to act, but maybe I want to help with the show. And I just think it makes it leaves so much room for people who might not have gotten this message because it wasn't intended for them to begin with. It gives them an opportunity to receive a message that they might not have seen before.
Yeah, exactly. I went back and read Hamlet after I saw the musical, the rock opera. It was amazing.
Yep.
Perry, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, I've seen at least to date, probably at least 2 or 3 contemporary versions of West Side Story on stage, done by high school. And so where it literally put into a hip hop vibe, West Side Story and hip hop vibe, and and I think that's the magic and the beauty of art. It's where you can take something, a genre, and twist it and stretch it and mangle it to a broader audience, and it still have the same impact, because I think when you talk about universal themes of love and misery and hate and all these things, those things don't really change. Oh. And that goes back to my idea that we all experience those things, but when you put them inside of art, it kind of broadens the audience. It kind of brings us together. I call it sort of like group therapy, when you're sitting around in a circle with people and they're expressing their problems. It's sort of like this synergy that happens where everyone is sort of like on the same vibe and they're enjoying the same thing, probably in their own way, but at the same time sharing it with everyone else. So,
right. Right. I love it when, and I've done shows where the audience can't help but start to talk to the actors on stage. I don't know if you've experienced that before, but
it's like they're yelling at a movie. It's
right,
like
I was gonna say not in a live theater, but in a movie, yeah.
I did some show.
You'll hear them, and it's like, this is not TV. You're not yelling at a sports screen, but they're into it.
I did a show once where the audience knows I'm trying to say something to the other character, and they know that I shouldn't say it. So the whole audience, and they're yelling at me, don't. You could hear them, don't. Not yelling, they're just soft, don't.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And then I do it, and you can hear them go, oh no. And that's just perfect for me, because it's like they are so there. They know what's going on. They know what's going on even before I say it. They know where it's headed. And that's very fun, very fun. And that's when you've got your audience and people are with you on it. So it's great for me. And I think one of the things that I want to do with Ebony Road Players especially is really have kids to have those types of experiences, going to shows that tell a story. And it's so important, because we don't always have that opportunity for kids because of cuts in schools where, the arts are the first thing to go. But I think parents don't realize how absolutely enlightening. Now, they don't have to become theater people, but we want them to enjoy it and understand it and be good audience members, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So having said that, tell me, we're going to do two things here. One, I want you to tell me, and maybe Perry, I know this of you, what was your favorite show you've ever been in? And tell me why. Ja'Nay, same thing. What's your favorite show you've ever been in? And tell me why.
Oh,
is that hard?
Yes, kind of. Because when I think I have it, I don't. Dog Sees God.
What?
Dog Sees God.
Okay.
I can't think of who it's by.
I know this show.
But I read it as like an assignment in school once. I had the script. I had always had the script. I love the script. And it was kind of like how I feel about Streetcar Named Desire. If you ever ask me, I'm auditioning. Okay. So the audition was presented and I was like, yes. Because my dream role is the therapist girl, the Lucy.
Okay.
The role was great. And I just thought being grown-up peanuts were the best thing in the whole wide world. So I think that's my favorite show.
That's great.
I think.
Okay. Well, I know it's hard because I always go back and forth on what my favorite thing is, and it depends on the day,
I'm thinking right now, if after Perry says a show, it might change.
Okay. I understand that. So Perry, West Side Story, or is it something else?
I'm going to have to go with West Side Story, and I know this is, it's predictable, but for many reasons, and because I call West Side Story, the gift that keeps on giving, not because it was my first and I was obsessed with it as a kid and on and on and on. It was my first real theater experience or whatever, but I go back to it as a standard bearer for understanding, screenplays and lyrics and the whole Linda Bernstein and all those guys who put together West Side Story. Literally decades later, I'm still finding layers to this onion where it's making me appreciate theater as a whole more and more. So that's why I call it as a standard bearer and why it's my favorite. It's because the things I'm learning about West Side Story musically and technically, and it's just, those guys were true geniuses. That word is thrown around a lot, but it's just, it's just every year it's still new to me. It's still fresh when I hear a song or whatever, the lyrics of the song and on and on and on. It's just like, wow, those guys are on another level. and it's timeless. It's so timeless, which is one of those things for me. But yeah, that's my favorite show.
I changed it.
You changed it.
I did.
What is it?
What is it?
Okay, so I guess it's like my favorite show. So this is my favorite show to do. My favorite show that I've done, I guess, would be For Colored Girls. Shout out to Ebony Rhodes.
Woohoo!
Hello.
I had never felt, I don't even have the words. And I know every time I talk about this, I say that. But like being in a cast with all Black women, staffed by all Black women, directed by Black women, put on a theater by Black women, I just felt so full. I had never, usually when I'm in a show, it's like butterflies, show opening night, and then I'm ready for teardown. I did not want I could have done For Colored Girls for 6 weeks. We could have took For Colored Girls on tour. I would have done For Colored Girls every day for 6 months in front of multi audiences. I loved that show for a different reason than I loved Dog Sees God. And it was just such an experience to have that in, talking to theater nerds and bringing things back full circle and building that community, being a woman, being Black, and being in a show with all of these other theater nerd women. It was like, yeah, nothing's better than this. Black women are top tier, and I'm just surrounded by them doing something that I love and watching them do something that they love. Favorite show, For Colored Girls. That's it.
That's a great point, because it's not only just the show, but who you are around while you're doing the show and the family that you build through that, because that's not really normal here. I think it's getting better, but that show is amazing. And can you, just for our audience, just in case they don't know what the show is about, can you not tell them what it's about? Well, you can, but tell them the whole name of the show and who.
That's like be a question. For Colored Girls who, Edye, that I would have failed on Jeopardy.
So For Colored Girls who've considered suicide when the rainbow is enough.
So that's a long sentence, and I can never get the whole thing.
I don't know. We tend to do these shows with long names. I don't know why, but
and culturally we shorten everything.
Yes,
so it's about a nickname that we'll never ever see the real name again.
Yeah.
So, but it is a show that explores all of these different walks of life for women of color through monologue and poetry. I often say it's my favorite way of Shakespeare, but it is written so beautifully. And like I said, it's a series of monologues that are written as poetry, and they just explore all of these different things that, because there's nothing new under the sun, were super relevant during the times that it was written and are still very, very relevant in today's climate. So I think there were, I can't think of how many colors there are, but I'm going to go on a limb and say 6.
I think you're right.
Or 5. I don't know. Don't quote me. Edit this out. There, in every color, every color represents a different type of
story or angst.
Correct. A different genre of woman and womanhood and what that looks like to them and through their lens. And at that particular time in my life, I was turning 30, and I actually had, I think, either opening night or one of the shows was on my actual 30th birthday. And it was, I get all goopy inside.
It was a wonderful show.
So
it really was. So, I mean, in those experiences, you just don't forget. Like, I haven't been on a theater stage in a long time, and I can just tell you the beauty of all the shows that I did. Whether I did them good or not, I don't know. I just know personally how much fun I had and what I learned from them. So you guys are great. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Before we end, I want you to talk a little bit about the show that you are both about to do, Mountaintop. Now I'm playing you now, Ja'Nay. I can't remember the playwright's name.
Katori Hall.
Katori Hall. I should have had it in front of me. I apologize, people.
I have my script sitting over there, but I remember her because she's doing a popular show on Stars right now.
Oh, yeah. And she's amazing. She's amazing. So talk to me a little bit about why you wanted to be a part of this particular show, The Mountaintop. You can do a quick synopsis of it. And then we'll tell everybody, I don't know when this is going to air, like I said, but we'll tell everyone that they can go on our website and find out when we are actually doing this. But who wants to start and kind of talk about why you decided to do it? What part are you playing? And you can just explain your idea of what the show's about.
I'll start. So it's a 2-person play, and it's Martin Luther King and a hotel maid, and I'm playing Martin Luther King. And one of the fascinating things, one of the blurbs that attracted me was that King is being played just as a normal guy, and all of his, flawed manliness, however you want to describe it. But yet he's still, the figurehead of this, this movement that we all know of, the civil rights movement, and just how he's navigating those two. I mean, that huge responsibility while just being this chain smoking preacher, who loves women, and so that's fascinating to me because, as monumental of a hero he is, I don't think I've never really, just from a kid, looked at him as someone, a superhero per se. I always looked at him as a natural, a normal guy, which only made his efforts and his advocacy that much more poignant to me. So that's why I got into it.
Perfect. Ja'Nay?
I got into it because you asked. Ever gonna tell you no? No, I think it's a great story, and I play the housekeeper who stumbles upon this man in his room and is there to, help him out. He needs a smoke. I actually got a smoke on me and asked for a sandwich, figure out how to get him a sandwich. I think, he needs some things, and I'm just kind of there to listen and see what's going on with him storming out. So just there to lend him a helping hand with what he might need for the evening.
Right. And we won't give away the ending.
No.
Or what's even in the middle of it. But
no spoil
it. We don't want to spoil it. But I just want you guys to know that you are perfect in your parts.
Thanks.
I picked you because I knew. I just knew. I
believe you.
This nerd.
I too
knows.
feel.
Yeah.
I have the same sentiments.
Yes.
With my husband, he's like, "You're not allowed to say that on stage." I'm like, "Yes." They entrusted me with these words. Aren't you proud?
And that's important. Not everyone can pull that stuff off. I'm telling you. And I just heard you, and you have done. This will be your second, 2 readings. This is not a whole show. We should tell people it is a reading that we are doing at Hope College in February, and during Black History Month, which I think is perfect time. And hopefully we can do it somewhere in Grand Rapids as a reading as well. But we want everyone to come and see it because it does look at things in a different way than I think most people would look at Martin Luther King, which, Perry, what you said is exactly right. He was just a man, and he was a young man.
He was young, yeah. Yep.
Who had all of that on his shoulders. And Ja'Nay is just there to, Kamei is just there to help him out. I like the way you said that.
Right. Just give him just ease a little tension.
Give him those, what cigarettes is he wanting?
Pall Malls.
Pall Mall cigarettes.
Pack of Pall Malls and some hot coffee.
That's right. That's
Hot
right.
coffee and
So, do you guys want to end with something? You gave me a lot of nuggets to think about, and you have any last words about your nerdiness or whatever we covered today? That's so cool. Being a nerd is cool. So I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody out there is a nerd, come see us. We want you.
Exactly.
We do. I love being a nerd. We actually joke about it. My best friend of 20 plus years, I was at her house last weekend and she was like, I honestly thought it was just something that you were going to grow out of. And I was like, me too. I thought that it was just going to be one day I was going to wake up and be like, I'm an adulty adult now and I'm not goofy and no more cartoons and no more real science stuff, girl. I'm gonna, and it never happened. It never happened. I still like books and I still am in theater and I still watch cartoons when they drop faithfully, not like with kids. I don't do it on I don't need kids. Watch cartoons by myself. So just if it's something that don't embrace the nerd, love the nerd, hug the nerd, yes. Especially in you, because there's no reason to fight it. It's not going to go away.
No. And you're part of life. You're part of life. That's what it is,
Yeah.
You got anything, Perry?
Yeah, I'm a huge, gigantic nerd advocate of the nerd. I am one. I'm, bookaholic. I've been teased about it since I was a kid. I've always had a huge library, and as a kid growing up in the JPs and the Jeffries Projects, being a nerd was not a status you proudly badged yourself with. So I was, but I also had the duality of being, let's just say, I got hands. If those who know what that means. Okay. Yeah, and so it was this weird juxtaposition because I also became sort of a bodyguard for nerds. That was my thing. I just had a passionate reflex to protecting nerds against bullies. Mm-hmm. Like to this day. And so I'm a defender, protector, and advocate of nerds everywhere, and glad to be one.
Same.
Awesome. I want to thank you both for coming and sharing with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So
thanks.
Everyone, this is Perry Dixon and Ja'Nay Duncan, and they are going to be in the next staged reading of The Mountaintop. You will find that information on the Ebony Road Players Facebook page as it gets closer. So we will talk to you too soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to the Ebony Road Players podcast. Creating theater with a purpose is our mission, and that is not possible without people like you. We appreciate you joining us for this podcast and for being a part of our diverse community. To view the video version of this episode and gain access to exclusive Ebony Road Players content and perks, join our community on Patreon at patreon.com/Ebony Road Players. In the words of Zora Neale Hurston, quote, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you," unquote. If you have a story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website, ebonyroad.org. And we look forward to continuing the conversation next time on the Ebony Road Players podcast.